I used to believe that loyalty meant something, that showing up time after time, sacrificing what you could even when it hurt, would eventually be seen, be honored, be rewarded. That belief shattered the day I opened that old document folder. It was a chilly Saturday afternoon in Bozeman, Montana. I had stopped by my parents' house on Riverbend Drive, like I did every weekend. Out of routine, out of obligation, out of some warped sense of duty I hadn't yet learned to question. My mother Maggie wasn't tech savvy, so I often came by to help her with the usual mess overdue bills, tax statements, doctor's appointment schedules. That two-story red brick house, the one I had spent nearly a decade helping renovate tile by tile, paycheck by paycheck, felt more like my second job than my second home. "Can you take a look at this for me?" she asked, barely glancing at me as she handed over a sloppy stack of papers, then slipped back out to tend her orchids in the backyard. The image was almost peaceful, almost. I sat down at the dining table, the same one I'd eaten at every Christmas since I was a child, and began sorting through the pile. That's when I saw it. A thick cream-colored envelope, bold black print across the front, estate plan and will. I paused not because I was nosy, at least that's what I told myself, but because I was always the one who made sure everything was in order, the one who kept things from falling apart. I opened it, flipped to the asset distribution page. My chest tightened like a vice. Everything, and I mean everything, was listed under Ashley's name. The house valued at over $450,000, the new SUV. Even Mom's diamond wedding ring, all of it left to my younger sister. Me, not a mention, not a line, just a vague lazy sentence at the top. "We love both our daughters." I clenched the page, my knuckles turning white. In that moment, 1,000 memories rushed in me. Working 2 jobs to help them cover the mortgage. Me delivering Mom's meds during a blizzard. Me crawling under that damn house to fix the busted pipes. Each one felt like it had just been wiped out by that cold, mechanical sentence. I heard the back door click shut, light footsteps behind me. "Claire, did you find the statement?" I stood slowly, the will still in my hand. My voice came out steady. Too steady. "Ma, is this real?" She froze. Her eyes darted to the envelope in my hand. "Oh, Claire, what does that mean?" I didn't let her finish. My throat burned, but my tone was sharp and deliberate. "It means I spent a lifetime taking care of you and Dad, and now I see exactly how much that meant to you." Just then, Dad walked in from the living room, coffee mug in hand. He sighed like I'd just overreacted to a bad weather forecast. "You don't have to take it this way, Claire. You're doing fine, Ashley. She's still figuring things out." A dry, bitter laugh slipped from my lips. Figuring things out. She's 30. She hasn't held a job longer than a season. She still calls you to pay her phone bill. I took a step forward. "I'm the one who paid your mortgage the last 3 years. I'm the one who fixed the damn roof in the snow. I'm the one who kept this house standing while you pretended everything was fine." Mom reached out, laid a hand on mine like that would somehow erase the sting. "Don't overthink it, honey. I just wanted your sister to feel secure." I pulled my hand back, looked her dead in the eye. Secure. And what about me, the one who gave everything and never asked for a damn thing in return? They said nothing. I placed the will back on the table like it was a loaded weapon and straightened my coat. "Thanks," I said quietly, coldly, "for showing me where I really stand." I walked out without looking back. No one called after me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel hurt. I just felt nothing. A hollow kind of silence that filled every corner of me, and somehow that felt even worse. A quiet, hollow kind of emptiness settled in my chest that day. So cold it felt like it could crack bone. I never went back to that house on Riverbend Drive after reading the will, not once. 2 weeks passed, not a call, not a message, like I'd never existed. I told myself maybe, just maybe, if they had a shred of conscience, they'd reach out, not to beg, not to grovel, just to acknowledge. But no, what I got instead was a text from Dad. "Claire, this month's mortgage is due. Can you transfer it soon? Deadline's Friday." I stared at the screen in disbelief, my coffee growing cold in my hand. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. No mention of the will, no acknowledgement of the betrayal, just a transaction, like I was some automated ATM with a pulse. I typed back slowly, each word deliberate and clean. I think Ashley can handle it. That house belongs to her now, right? I set the phone down and didn't wait for a reply. I didn't care if one came. 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. Mom. Claire, don't do this. We need to talk. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the truth was, I wasn't even angry anymore. I had burned through that fire weeks ago. All that was left was ash and a ruthless clarity. For years, I believed my sacrifices would mean something, that being the reliable daughter, the strong one, would eventually be enough. It never was. 3 days passed. Then Ashley texted me. You're overreacting. Mom and Dad didn't mean it like that. You've always been independent. I'm just not. You know that. I stared at the words, the excuses, the same ones I'd heard all my life. I typed slowly, each word slicing through her mask of helplessness. Then prove you deserve what you've been given. Start by paying the mortgage. She never responded. Another week passed in silence. Then one Monday morning, while I was sipping coffee in my tiny Denver apartment, my phone buzzed with a payment request. $900 from Mom. No message. Just a soulless request for money, like the will hadn't happened, like I didn't matter. I hit decline without a moment's hesitation. Minutes later, the phone rang. I let it buzz 4 times before pressing decline. A message followed. Claire, I know you saw it. Why did you decline? I closed my eyes, breathed in, and replied, because it's no longer my responsibility. Ask Ashley. And with that single message, I reclaimed something they never thought I would control. For the first time in my life, I felt something I didn't quite recognize at first: control. Not the fake kind where you're praised for being so responsible while silently cleaning up everyone's messes. No, this was different. I wasn't scrambling to fix cracks. I didn't create. I wasn't patching up decades of neglect with my time, my money, and my emotional bandwidth. I was finally still. 3 days later, the silence broke predictably. Ashley texted me, "You're being so selfish. Didn't you always say family comes first?" I stared at the message. Read it, then read it again. The irony practically burned through the screen. Family? She meant the same family that had erased me from a legal document like I'd never existed. The same people who handed me the wreckage and then had the audacity to call me dramatic when I said I was done bleeding for them. I replied with one sentence. Family is about fairness and respect, not using someone until they're no longer useful. After that, nothing. Just silence. But this time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like air finally entering lungs that had been clamped shut for years. It felt like freedom. Still, I knew better than to believe it would last. The silence wasn't an end. It was a pause, a strategic retreat from a family that only shows up when they've run out of other people to exploit. And when that moment came, I wouldn't flinch. I wouldn't rescue. I wouldn't even look back. A few days later, around midnight, while I was curled up with a historical novel and sipping jasmine tea, my phone lit up again. Ashley, you're blowing this way out of proportion. Of course I was. I always was. Any time I said no, I was too cold, too dramatic, too unforgiving. I scrolled. Everyone's already stressed out. Why are you choosing now to make it worse? It's just a few payments. You've always done it. I laughed. Dry, humorless. Just a few payments, spoken like someone who's never seen an electric bill with their name on it. I typed back. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being clear, and you'd better get used to it. The reply came fast, impulsive, and venomous. You're seriously selfish. Don't be surprised if Mom and Dad never forgive you. That one didn't even sting. I set the phone down on the nightstand, turned off the lamp, and let the quiet wash over me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel that old familiar ache in my chest. The one that always whispered, what if they're upset? What if you're not being the good daughter anymore? I had crossed the line, the invisible one between being endlessly available and finally done. The next morning I called the bank. had my name removed from the joint account tied to their mortgage. I contacted the utility companies, canceled every auto payment I'd been secretly covering. I opened my phone and deleted every reminder, water bill, gas, HOA dues. It felt like a ceremony, a quiet, powerful unbinding. That night, I lit a candle in my Denver apartment, queued up my favorite playlist, and bought myself a chocolate cake I'd always wanted, but never let myself have because there was always something more urgent to pay for. I ate it slowly alone with no guilt. I slept soundly, no phantom notifications waking me at 2 a.m. I went to work without feeling like I was dragging the weight of 3 grown adults behind me. I even signed up for an online art class, something I used to dream about, but never gave myself permission to pursue. And as my life finally began to exhale on its own, I knew one thing for certain. The past wasn't done knocking, but this time I wouldn't answer the door. Early the next week, my phone lit up. "Mom." I didn't answer. Seconds later, the inevitable message followed. "Claire, we need to talk. Ashley doesn't know how to pay the internet bill. Can you help?" I stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen without replying. 2 days pass. Another message. "The landline got cut. She says she can't log in. I don't know what to do." I walked over to the bookshelf in my apartment, pulled out an old black notebook from the bottom shelf, the one I had filled over the years with passwords, due dates, account numbers, emergency contacts. I'd once called it the family's brain because no one else ever remembered anything. Every time my parents were confused, they called me. Every time Ashley forgot a payment, missed a deadline, or messed something up, it was me who fixed it. Quietly, immediately, without thanks. I looked down at the pages, neat handwriting tabs for gas, water, mortgage, auto insurance. Their entire adult life outsourced to me. This time I closed the book, slid it back in place. I wasn't their assistant anymore. I wasn't the backbone of a system that had erased me the second I stopped being useful. 3 days later, my phone buzzed again. "Ashley, are you kidding me right now? The power's about to get shut off. Are you seriously going to let that happen to our family?" I didn't even blink. I typed one sentence. "No, I'm just letting everyone take responsibility for their own choices." Silence. And it stayed that way for days. No texts, no calls, just a strange, steady stillness that blanketed everything like snow. Until one morning, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then checked the message. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor who'd lived next to my parents for over 20 years. Her voice was soft, hesitant. "Claire, your mom asked me if I knew anyone looking to buy a house. I think things aren't going too well over there." I thanked her, hung up, and sat there for a long while, just watching sunlight spill through the window, casting soft gold patterns across my hardwood floor. I didn't feel smug. I didn't feel vindicated, but I also didn't feel guilty. What I felt was absence, not of love, not even of duty, but of that crushing constant weight I used to carry like it was stitched into my skin. That weight was gone, and I wasn't going to take it back. The next message came that Monday morning, from a number I hadn't seen in years. Mr. Walter, another neighbor from Bozeman, a kind older man who used to lend us a snow shovel every winter. "Claire, are your parents?" Okay, Maggie seemed confused about the date the other day, but then she got a letter from the bank, something about foreclosure. Foreclosure. The word sat in my chest like a stone. So it had started. Only 4 weeks since I'd pulled the plug. 4 weeks since the scaffolding I'd spent years building had been taken away. And the whole structure began to collapse. An hour later, my phone rang. "Mom." I didn't answer. Then the text followed. "Claire, please. We really need you right now. It's serious." I stared at it, the blue message bubble hovering on my screen. I didn't cry. I didn't clench my fists, but my chest ached, not out of longing or regret, but exhaustion, like a tired muscle that had finally stopped trying to hold something impossible. I had once imagined this moment would bring some twisted sense of satisfaction. It didn't. It just made me feel hollow. Not because they were falling apart, but because for so long I had believed my purpose was to keep them together. 2 days later, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ashley standing there, wearing a wrinkled hoodie, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, gripping a cluttered stack of documents. "I just need 5 minutes," she said, breathless. "Just 5 minutes, Claire." I didn't move from the doorway. "You here to ask for money?" She shook her head. Not money, I don't understand these bank forms. I don't know what any of this means. Her voice cracked. I'm overwhelmed. I looked at her, really looked at her. This was the girl who had inherited everything, who had smiled and signed the will without hesitation. What about the inheritance? I asked, tone casual. Thought you had it all covered. She looked down. It's tied up in a portfolio. If I pull it now, there's a penalty. I didn't think it would spiral this fast. I raised a brow. Yet you didn't hesitate when you signed for everything. I thought Mom and Dad had it handled, she said weakly. They said it was all set. I didn't think. Exactly. I cut in. You didn't think, just like always. She fell silent. I stepped outside, pulling the door closed gently behind me. This is the part no one ever taught you. Everyone stumbles, but no one learns if someone's always there to catch them. She stared at me, eyes wide. You're really going to let them lose the house? I shook my head. I'm not letting anything happen. They made their choice. Now they live with it. Then I turned around and walked away, leaving her standing there in the hallway alone, for the first time in a very, very long time. 3 days later, I ran into Ryan Miller, an old classmate turned real estate agent, at a networking event hosted by the Lakeside Arts Collective in Denver. I had just wrapped up a conversation about my latest photography project, portraits of women reclaiming their identities, when he spotted me by the refreshment table. Claire, he asked, brows lifting in surprise. Wait, Bennett. I nodded, smiling politely. I thought that was you, he said. Hey, random question, but is your parents' house on Riverbend Drive in Bozeman? My chest tightened slightly. I nodded again, slower this time. Someone on my team mentioned it, he continued. It's listed with a local agent now. They said it's in pre-foreclosure. The place needs a ton of work. He hesitated, then asked gently, Are you okay? I gave him a small practiced smile, the kind that said just enough. I'm fine, I replied. I guess they're not. Ryan looked like he wanted to say more, but he caught himself. Maybe he sensed that whatever was behind my words was heavier than what casual conversation could hold. That night back in my apartment, I opened my laptop to find an email from an old contact. A legal aid nonprofit I had volunteered with during college. They were launching a new program to mentor seniors struggling with housing debt and estate planning. They were looking for volunteers with experience in family finance, property transitions, or just compassion. I sat still for a long time staring at the screen. Then I smiled quietly, knowingly. Life had a strange way of circling back. But this time I wasn't circling back to fix anything, not for them. This was for me, the woman who had spent a decade patching roofs and transferring mortgage payments in silence. The woman who had finally learned how to let go. I filled out the application and hit send. That Saturday afternoon, after finishing a photography workshop at the community center, I returned to my quiet Denver apartment. I was looking forward to nothing more than a hot cup of chai and an evening of editing portraits. But as I pulled into the parking lot, I saw it. The silver minivan. The same one I had co-signed 4 years ago, when Dad's credit had tanked. I'd finally transferred the title to him last year. My final gesture of trust, closure. Now it sat near the gate like a ghost from a life I'd buried. I got out of my car slowly. They were waiting by the building entrance. My parents and Ashley, a few steps behind, clutching her purse like it was her last line of defense. Her face was pale lips drawn tight. I said nothing, didn't greet them, didn't ask why they came. I just stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, waiting. Mom spoke first, voice trembling like a cracked teacup. Claire, I'm sorry we had to come here. Things have gotten out of hand. The bank's sending someone next week to reassess the house. Dad picked up where she left off. His voice was lower than usual, tired, almost broken. We made a mistake. He admitted, I know that now, but if the house is taken, your mother won't be able to handle it. I looked at him steady and cold. Then why I asked when you wrote the will, did you decide I wasn't worth including? He dropped his gaze, fingers fidgeting at the hem of his coat. Back then, and we thought you'd be fine. You've always been strong. I almost laughed. Not from humor, but disbelief. And Ashley, I cut in. She gets to fail, gets forgiven, gets everything. I turned to my sister. She didn't speak, just looked away. I gave away my youth. I continued without conditions, and in return, you gave me nothing but expectations and the assumption that Claire will take care of it. I'm not in that role anymore. Tears welled in Mom's eyes. We didn't know it would come to this. Please, just a little help, just until we can stabilize. I shook my head slowly as if letting go of something ancient in my chest. I'm not saying no because I can't help. I said I'm saying no because if I do, you'll believe again that you never need to change. Ashley finally spoke. Her voice was barely audible. I didn't realize it would get so complicated. I thought it just needed time. She paused, then added, I didn't think you'd walk away so fast. I looked at her, really looked. I didn't walk away fast. I said I warned. I waited, I hoped, but all of you chose to ignore it. There was a silence after that, heavy and cold. So this is really the end, Mom whispered. I looked at her. The woman I once nursed back from pneumonia drove to ERs in the middle of snowstorms, brought home soup when Dad forgot to cook. And I realized something? I didn't hate her. But I didn't know her either. I didn't end this, I said softly. It ended the moment you chose who deserved to be seen and who didn't. No one said a word. The late autumn wind swept through the parking lot, rustling leaves like whispered truths no one wanted to hear. I walked up the steps, pulled out my keys, and paused at the door. I hope you figure it out, I said, turning one last time. But I'm no longer the lifeline for this family. I looked at Ashley. If you want to grow up, this is your chance. I've stepped off the merry-go-round. Now it's your turn. Then I walked in and closed the door behind me. No tears, no collapse, just peace, and the sound of wind fading behind glass. A week passed. I thought the confrontation in the parking lot would be the final chapter, the quiet closing of a door I no longer needed to knock on. But one evening, just as I was finishing up edits for the gallery submission, my phone buzzed. Jenna Cruz, my closest coworker at the art center. Claire, are you on Facebook? You should check your mom's page. She's posting some wild things. My fingers hesitated. I hadn't opened Facebook in months. I barely remembered the password. When I finally logged in, my hand shook. Not from fear, but a familiar kind of exhausted anticipation, like you already know it's going to hurt, but you have to look anyway. I typed Maggie Bennett into the search bar. Her profile picture was a vase of roses. Her banner was an overfiltered sunset with a Bible verse in cursive. But it was her latest post that hit like a slap. A photo of the house, the porch I painted, the shutters I hung, the same red bricks I'd spent a decade keeping from crumbling. It's heartbreaking when your own daughter turns her back on her family, abandoning sick and aging parents, refusing to help when we needed her most after everything we sacrificed for her. Over 80 shares. The comments were full of gasps and sympathy and judgment from people who had no idea what had really happened. Ungrateful, heartless. I raised my kids better than that. I scrolled further and saw Dad's post next. We thought Claire was someone who valued family, but when things got hard, she just walked away. No warning. The house is about to be taken, and she acts like nothing's happening. And then came Ashley. Of course, some people are only generous when they're in control. But when the roles are reversed, when family asks for help, they suddenly need space. I guess that's what being strong means now. It was mockery, a cheap performance of victimhood. And I'd seen it before, dozens of times. In passive-aggressive texts, in holiday silences, in whispered family phone calls I wasn't supposed to hear. But this time they weren't whispering. They were putting it on a stage. I stared at the screen, a jaw clenched, not angry, just tired. Because when guilt didn't work, they turned to public shaming. But what they forgot, what they never imagined, was that I wasn't silent anymore. That night I opened my laptop. No filters, no background colors, no vague quotes. Just truth. My family has chosen to share a one-sided story, so let me balance the narrative. I attached a photo of the will, Ashley's name, bold and clear, listed as the sole beneficiary. Then I posted snapshots of every mortgage payment receipt, every utility bill, every homeowner insurance policy, all under my name. The water bill from January I paid when the pipes burst. The $2,900 transfer request from Mom, the one she sent after leaving me out of the will. And I ended it with one line. My silence wasn't consent. I was just waiting for the right moment to tell the truth. That moment is now. Within 10 minutes, the comments started rolling in. "Claire, you seriously did all of this? I had no idea." "I'm so sorry. No one deserves to be erased like that. I always thought Ashley lived a little recklessly." Now it makes sense. Even people who had known my parents chimed in quietly, carefully. They always talked about Claire being fine, like her stability excused everything. I didn't respond. I didn't defend. I didn't need to. The post spoke for itself. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It simply revealed. And the impact rippled fast. 2 days later, Mom deleted all her posts. Dad deactivated his account entirely. Ashley changed her profile picture to a black and white flower, her go-to move, when things spiraled out of her control. Her caption was one word heavy. I didn't respond to that either. Because this time I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel the urge to fix, to explain, to smooth it over. I sat in my apartment listening to the soft Denver rain tap against the windows. There was no victory dance. No fireworks. Just justice, quiet and long overdue. I didn't need them to apologize. I didn't need them to bow their heads and admit they were wrong. I just needed them to stop. And it seemed, finally, they did. It had taken one post. One thread of truth laid bare for the world to see. Enough to end years of gaslighting. Enough to stop being the family's silent scapegoat. And now I wasn't just done playing the role of the good daughter. I was writing the next chapter of my life. Not in a thread, not in a comment box, but out there in real life, with my camera, with my art, with my own 2 hands building something no one could take credit for but me, because this wasn't a story about revenge anymore. It was a story about release, and I had never felt lighter. Since the day I posted the truth, I haven't heard a word from my mom, my dad, or Ashley. Not even a passive-aggressive quote on Facebook, not a backhanded apology, not even a message pretending everything was fine. Just silence. But not the kind that waits, hovers, holds its breath. This was the silence of acceptance. The kind that happens when something inside them realizes they finally lost the one person who always came back after they broke everything. And me, I didn't just walk away. I began to live. Every Monday morning, I made my way to the Lakeside Arts Collective, where I taught high schoolers their first lessons in photography, the way their faces lit up as they held a camera for the first time. Raw, unfiltered wonder in their eyes reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. They saw the world differently, through light and angles and shadow, through possibility. Sometimes I'd watch them frame shots of old alleyways or cracked sidewalks and find beauty where most people saw failure. And I'd smile because I was learning to do the same with my life. In the evenings, I took a part-time course in video editing, something I'd put off for years, always telling myself there were more important things to do, more urgent people to save. But now, no one needed me, and for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom. I started going on evening walks, slow, unhurried, no destination, just movement. I baked on Sundays blueberry muffins, rosemary bread, a banana loaf that came out lopsided and perfect. I posted pictures of my messy kitchen and crooked pastries on Instagram. I laughed in the captions. I let go of the fear of being called fake or attention-seeking. No one could accuse me of pretending anymore. My life was finally real. I made friends in class. People who didn't know me as the fixer, the caretaker, the invisible daughter. People who knew me simply as Claire, the woman with a camera and a quiet laugh who loved light and motion and stories. And because of that, I finally got to just be. Meanwhile, across the city in Bozeman, the house at 227 Riverbend Drive was deteriorating in plain view. Marcus, a friend of mine turned real estate agent, texted one afternoon, "Claire, your parents' house is up on the listings. Asking $390,000, but no offers. Roof's leaking, wiring's faulty. It's rough." I wasn't surprised. There was no one left to fix the fuse box at 2 a.m. No one to replace the busted water heater or argue with the HOA rep over late fees. No more me. That house had survived as long as it had because of me. And now, it reflected the truth. Neglected, crumbling, a facade with no foundation. A few days later, I got a call from Mrs. Callahan, the elderly neighbor who used to sneak me lemon bars after school when I was 12. She just wanted to check in, but before hanging up, she mentioned casually, "Oh, and it looks like Ashley's moved back in. I see her doing grocery runs with your mom. She doesn't look too happy." I looked up from my laptop and took a sip of tea. Years ago, that sentence would have made my chest tighten. Now, I just shrugged. Maybe Ashley needed to experience what instability felt like. The instability I had shielded her from for so long while she lived in the comfort of other people's labor. I wasn't glad they were struggling. I just no longer felt the need to carry the consequences of choices I never made. For the first time in a decade, my savings account was growing. I booked a fall trip to Seattle just to capture the changing leaves on camera. I put a deposit down on a new semi-pro camera. Not because I needed it, but because I finally believed I deserved it. I learned to care for myself the way I once cared for an entire household. And then I began to write, not long-winded Facebook responses or frantic explanations, but a blog about boundaries, about toxic family cycles, about the quiet grief of walking away and the louder joy of staying gone. Some of my posts were shared dozens of times. Some were emailed to me with messages like, "Thank you for writing what I've never had the words to say." I never expected to become a voice for others. But maybe that's what healing does. It echoes. One rainy afternoon at my favorite cafe, my phone buzzed with a real estate notification. Price dropped by $30,000 on 227 Riverbend Drive owner seeking urgent sale. I opened the link. Dark roof tiles. A rotting fence. Window frames peeling at the corners. A once solid home slowly caving in on itself. It used to represent duty, pressure, expectation. Now it was just a house waiting to be rescued, and I wasn't the rescuer anymore. I tapped hide notification, closed my phone, and smiled. A quiet smile, lighter than air, deeper than any sigh I had swallowed for 20 years. Because I no longer belonged there. Not in that house. Not in that dynamic. Not in that version of me. One early winter afternoon, I was walking around Liberty Lake, camera in hand. The golden light of dusk filtered through bare branches, reflecting off the water like liquid fire. I stopped, raised the lens, clicked. A little boy ran through the field, his mother behind him laughing, calling out free. In that moment, I realized some things are not meant to be held onto, because they were never really yours to begin with. A few weeks after the house dropped off the listings entirely, I found something waiting in my mailbox. A familiar blue envelope. The kind I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. The handwriting on the front, I knew it instantly. My mother's soft cursive. Careful loops ink pressed just a little too hard on the downstrokes. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. No apology. No dramatic pleas. Just a slow unraveling of someone trying to find their way through regret. She wrote about her sleepless nights. About how she wakes up at 3 a.m. and doesn't know whether it's the cold or the guilt that keeps her up. She wrote about my father, how he's not as strong as he used to be. How the house feels bigger now, emptier. How Ashley tries but doesn't know where to begin. And then near the end, "I don't know how much time we have left to fix things, but if you're willing, I'm still here." I didn't cry. I didn't tear it up, and I didn't write back. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into the drawer beneath my desk, next to a stack of undeveloped film rolls and half-written essays about silence, resilience, and rediscovery. Some things don't need to be answered right away. Some things just need to be sat with. Because I didn't hate them, not anymore. I just no longer had the strength to keep sacrificing in places where I wasn't truly seen. So I kept moving forward. I kept teaching capturing the light in students' eyes when they saw their first photograph printed on real paper. I kept writing stories that weren't meant to expose, but to witness, to give language to people who had spent their lives giving shrinking hoping. And one quiet evening, I held my very first photo exhibit at a friend's cafe in Capitol Hill. Each image told a piece of my story. Early morning mist drifting over a park bench. A cracked sidewalk with a single flower blooming through it. A woman's hands, old and lined, cradling a steaming cup of tea. A reflection in a puddle, distorted but beautiful. A woman maybe in her 40s lingered at one of the pieces longer than the rest. She came up to me afterward, took my hand gently and said, "I don't know why, but every photo of yours feels like it's speaking for someone who's been silent for a long time." I smiled because she was right. I had spent most of my life staying quiet. For peace, for the role of the good daughter, for the hope that if I gave enough, I'd finally be seen. But I've chosen a different kind of peace now, not one that requires silence, one that comes from choosing myself. I've learned how to love myself unconditionally. I've learned how to say no without guilt. I've learned to let others carry their own weight, make their own choices, and face their own consequences. And most importantly, I've learned how not to look back. My family still exists on paper and memory, but they're no longer at the center of my life. Will there be a reunion someday? I don't know. Will they ever truly understand the damage done? Maybe not, but that's no longer the question I live inside. Because I finally understand something no one ever taught me. Family isn't the people who share your last name. Family is the people who respect your boundaries, who don't treat your kindness like a chore, who make you feel seen, chosen, and safe. And if none of them can do that, that's okay. Because I've built a new family of friends, of students, of strangers, who recognize the language of quiet survival. And because of that, I'm no longer lost. I'm not angry. I'm just free. My story isn't a tragedy. It's an awakening. I once believed love and sacrifice would always be rewarded, that family was unshakable. But the truth is, no one deserves to be taken for granted, not even by their own blood. I've learned to walk away, to stand still, to choose peace without needing permission. And in doing that, I've learned to live, not for them. For me, I've learned to draw lines where there used to be open doors, to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. And most importantly, I've learned to choose myself without apology, without hesitation, and without regret. Today, I live with a kind of peace I never thought was possible. A peace that doesn't come from fixing others, but from finally healing myself. Not because they changed, but because I did. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between your peace and your place in a family? Was Claire wrong to walk away? Or was it the only way to finally stand tall? Tell me what you think in the comments. And follow the channel for more stories like this. Because somewhere, someone else needs to hear that it's okay to let go and that walking away doesn't make you cruel, it makes you free.